Hi world. Uh, I know some people out there know me because I've spent the past 4 years battling family courts and being active. I've been less vocal for the past, I don't know, 6 months or so because, hey, I'm a human being. I have a life, I have my own problems. So, anyway, I'm starting a new program. It is called Against My Will. Since we are living in family court hell, part of you will understand the name as a metaphor for the slavery system now taking place in the United States to strip people of children, to bill them for having their children removed. And I don't need to belabor that point at this juncture. The second reason I picked the title Against My Will is because, as important as I see my role in trying to help correct the family court systems, I really don't want to be doing this. I think people out there can relate that are, in the system. They would be much happier just parenting their children or living a normal life. But fate being what it is, I guess I am now a advocate for reforming the family court system, and I see it as really important that people like myself speak out. And so, because I see it as important, I will speak out, even though I am basically doing it against my will. Another side note is that not only within our movement, but within news media in general, there's a lot of hate, a lot of anger, a lot of people that are pissed off at stuff, and to be frank, a lot of it's justified. The world is not the world we thought it was going to be when we grew up and went to school. It's kind of fallen apart, and whether it's our fault or somebody else's fault, we can debate some other day. But what I'm really getting at is that I am going to, as best I can, try to produce this show with a go-lucky, happy, bouncy voice as opposed to a voice of frustration and anger. Now, that in no way implies that this whole situation does not anger me or frustrate me. It's just that I believe we accomplish more if we can try to speak from a position of love than from a position of hate. So, I do multimedia stuff and video and graphics, and so it's quite ironic that version 1 of my show starts with basically a still logo sitting up here and nothing exciting to look at. But again, if you're doing a show against your will, you kind of lose the motivation to put a lot of creative energy into it. Okay, where to go from here? There's a lot happening in the movement. I try to keep my eyes at the highest levels as to what groups are doing what and how we can unify those groups in order to be stronger. The two things that I've been most strongly putting my time and energy behind are Mark Ludwig, Americans for Equal Share Parenting, and his effort to move along equal parenting legislation as a state-by-state battle. And just as importantly, he's doing, like many before him, he's trying to make it a national movement. He's trying to get a bunch of different organizations to work together under the same umbrella and kind of leave all the bickering aside. The bickering seems to be a part of what we do, so I'm not getting stuck on that subject, but we just move forward with the people that are willing to work together, and if other people are just basically too injured by all this hell, then they need to go fix themselves and come back. So I'm doing a lot to support Mark and AFESP, Shared Parenting. That said, I want to be open by saying that, it's only one facet. There's 100 different ways that this slices and dices. I'm very compassionate about the people that are fighting child protective services. In some ways, that whole faction is even more evil than the stuff we're dealing with, but I'm only one guy. I try to keep eyes on parental alienation stuff. I'm very intrigued by the ACE studies, by the work of, I'll probably get her name wrong, Nadine Harris Burke. If I've slaughtered your name, I'm sorry. She's doing a lot of stuff to move the health industry for ACE studies, and I think when we start tying in to ACE studies, we are going to make a lot of progress. I also want to have a shout out to Ira Scott. I'm very aware that he has done a lot of work in the ACE arena, and whoever I've forgotten, you can be insulted at this point. I am putting a lot of time and energy, I shouldn't say a lot, as much time and energy as I can into helping support my friend and cohort Cash Jackson as he tries for the governor position in the state of Illinois. I am very optimistic that people like Cash will actually have a shot at these positions in the next 6 months. I think that we can see through the DC marches, the shooting marches, and that people are becoming more politically active. One of the stats that I'll throw up really briefly here, I keep meaning to make a video, it's on my longer term to-do list, but one of the fallacies in our political system right now is that independent people like Cash, and to be clear, he's not an independent, he's running on the libertarian ticket, but within that umbrella of independent, Gap polling in the past 14 months has showed that 40% or more of the population identifies as independent. And to be totally clear about this, that is the majority, okay? We're living in this world with all this media hype. You're going to always see the stats of Democratic versus Republicans everywhere. They have all the money, they have all the power at this point. But when you ask voters what they want, ultimately, what it comes down to is they say that they are not associated with either of those parties. They do not associate. And then when they don't associate, the Gallup polls then go on and add additional question that says, hey, if you're independent and you had to vote Democratic or Republican, which would you take? So that speaks a lot to where our country is at right now. And I think that if we get these messages out to the media, I think we can quickly dispel through social media the mythology that somehow third-party candidates are like, you know, on a back burner somewhere. The third-party candidates at this point actually control the majority of the vote in this country, and you're all being duped. You're being duped. And as I said, I'm gonna try to cut a video at some point that does a sexier job of conveying that concept. But for now, you just have me gabbing at you with a still image on the screen. I have produced a film short. It is 8 minutes in length. A lot of you have seen it. I do try to distribute it. It has shown in a couple movie houses at small festivals. I continue to try to get it submitted. There's, you know, hundreds of festivals out there, and I try to pick ones where it has a shot. You know, it's not Hollywood and stuff, so, you know, it's not going to get picked up by Sundance or anybody, you know, cool at this point. But at least if we can get it out there, it's yet another medium to move our message along. So, yes, a self-promotion plug. I want to cover an important point about parental alienation and the fixes that need to happen in the family court system. What the lawyers and the courts want you to believe is that these are two separate worlds. Nothing could be further from the truth. Parental alienation and family courts issues are completely enmeshed, and it's this enmeshment that is making family courts profitable for lawyers. The lawyers recognize parental alienation, they understand parental alienation, and they are leveraging parental alienation for their benefit. Above all, what we need to determine is, can the courts, number one, recognize abuse, and number two, rule justly? And if the answer is no, then 50-50 custody is the safest scenario for the children, merely because they will not lose access to their nurturing parent. Okay? So if you have any scenario that you're going to create where the abusive parent can come in and take the kids, that's the worst case scenario. And so if the courts can't handle through either corruption or just inability to understand parental alienation or abuse, then we want the courts out of the system. We want the courts to rule on 50-50, and the best interest of the children is merely to reduce the amount of time, energy, money, and hell that the courts are putting on any family that goes near them. Okay, this is the point where I add earth-shattering, inspirational closing dialogue, but I just can't be bothered. Issues, we need to